every job that's ever been offered, I question, like, am I ready for that? Am I good enough to do that? And luckily I had like my mom and my husband and people, I just believed that like, well, I'm going to figure it out. And if I fail, I fail. And so find someone to talk it through or take the risk, take the challenge, open up to somebody, because I do think too many, especially women, don't ever believe they're ready for the role.
Welcome back to Created for Creatives, the podcast where creatives talk about, well, creative. I'm Joe Hawkins, your host for this episode, where we're discussing non-traditional work entered into the London International Awards. Joining me is Liz Taylor, the Global Chief Creative Officer at Ogilvy, and Nicky Bullard, the Group Chief Creative Officer for the Mullen Lowe Group in London. Liz had her career planned. Her older brother was a lawyer. To her, that was what success looked like. At university, she studied pre-law, along with creative writing.
I applied to law school. I got into law school. The interesting thing is that I was obsessed with ads. My entire dorm room, while other people had, band photos or like movies, I had ads. I had Absolute ads that I collected for years and Nike ads because I thought the writing. So that was like my dorm decor. But I never knew that that was a job. So I graduate college. I'm all set to go to law school in the fall. And my brother was home for the summer and pulled me aside and literally said, "What the fuck are you doing? It's going to suck every ounce of creativity out of you. I think you think it's like LA Law," which I realized I just dated myself. But it was like the legal show of the time that was like, courtroom dramatics. He's like, "There's no monologues. Like, you cannot do that. You cannot go." And I think I needed somebody to tell me. I just didn't know what jobs existed. People were accountants or lawyers. And so I didn't know what to do. I just knew I loved ads and creativity. So I'm from Chicago, which is like home of Leo Burnett. So the next day I cold called Leo Burnett and I just said, "How do I get a job making ads?" It was some kind of magical fate. The woman who answered the phone connected me to someone in the creative department who, said, "What do you want to do? Do you want to be a writer or an art director?" I'm like, "I don't know what that means." "Do you have a portfolio?" "I don't know what that means." And they said, "Well, we have a portfolio night. We do it, once a quarter, and it happens to be in 2 days. Would you like to come and you can see the portfolios of people that we've hired?" And so I went. I thought it was an interview. I bought a suit. This is how little I knew. And I show up and it was like, the clouds parted. And I was like, this is what I meant to do. And I found out about, trade school, portfolio center. And I called the next day. I found out it cost as much as law school, but without a degree. But luckily I had like the world's most supportive mom who was like, "You got to do it. It's so you." And the rest is history. The next time I walked into Leo Burnett, by the way, was many years later as the global CCO. So that was a very special moment to go in there the second time.
That's amazing. And it's funny you talk about your mum and supportive mums. So I did the D&AD student course back in the day. Once a week on a Wednesday, you go into a different agency, get a different brief for the following week, take some work and get it critiqued. And it sort of went like that. And then I graduated from the ad school as it was then. And then there was a massive recession in the advertising industry. And this was along the pre-internet as well. So I spent a year moping around at my mum and dad's on the sort of thinking this industry was never for me anyway, and lost all my confidence. And my mum got me a subscription to Campaign magazine. They had no money, mum and dad. And she said, "One day you're going to be in that magazine," and then one day I was. And it was amazing.
On that same note, my mom always got subscriptions to the magazine, like to Adweek, Ad Age, Campaign, Archive. She got them and saved them all. So I love that we both have
to follow your career.
Just to follow the career. And, when I first told her I was going to Leo Burnett, she was dying. It was a sad, I said, "Mom, can you believe after all these years, I'm going to go be a global CCO. I did it. And I'm going to do it at Leo Burnett." And the first thing she said, "Make sure you take care of Mark Tutzel. He's a good man." How did my mom know Mark Tutzel?
That's amazing.
That was just from following.
Just reading the magazines, yeah.
And my mum, she didn't read magazines. We got the agency of the UK was Saatchi & Saatchi at the time, so I ended up working at M&C Saatchi for 16 years, and that was it for her. It was like, she knew who Saatchis were.
I love it.
That's great. I'm going to jump to a question which actually sort of ties into this a little bit. So a lot of people that will be listening to this podcast will be juniors or perhaps starting out their careers. And I think a lot of them are aware of what a CD is and what a CD does in an agency. But when you get to your level, Global Chief Creative Officer, I think there's a lot of people who know those titles exist but don't actually know what it is that you do at that level. So if you could briefly describe the difference between that and being a CD, and also how close you are now to the creative work, or are you just so far removed from it that you don't get to see a lot of things that are going through?
I think the role of a global CCO is, I work at Ogilvy. We have an amazing global network, and it's huge. So one is to make sure we are connected, and it is a true global network. It's not just offices in different locations. So we have a global creative council of CCOs from regions and who run our biggest offices or our biggest account, and we meet every Tuesday. Yeah. So every single Tuesday we are meeting to go through what is happening on our biggest accounts, what's happening, from a talent standpoint. I feel like one of my biggest jobs is to take all the barriers away so that people can do the best work of their lives. So I do think that that is one of my roles, whatever that is. If there's a financial situation that I need to clear up over here, if there is a client that doesn't understand bravery and creativity, I have a responsibility to go take that client on the journey. Anything I can do to set up everybody else's success. I really do believe in, I work for all of them. And, setting the bar for creativity, making sure we have a vision, the type of work we want to do, goals every year. Nobody goes into this industry going, I cannot wait to be a manager one day. I mean, we just talked about why we did it. We are creative souls, and it would kill my soul if I wasn't close to the work. I can't be on every project, but that's why we have, a council meeting every Tuesday. I'm very involved in our biggest clients. I work on pitches. And so sometimes, now I have the luxury of sometimes I get to pick and choose projects. Sometimes a CCO or an ECD will ask for my help on something. But I like to think that I'm still very involved. I don't think leadership that just sits in a tower and kind of says what they want works anymore. I think we all have to roll up our sleeves and do it together.
I think Liz is on a whole different level, the global level, the complexity of that. I agree with you. If I wasn't doing some of the work, I wouldn't be able to stay in the industry. I couldn't just be watching other people doing the work. But there is a wonderful joy you get from helping, like you say, taking away the barriers. And also, I think a big part of my role is to champion all the people in my department and champion them every single day within the agency and the wider network, but also within the industry. Champion the agency wherever I can, champion the industry, which we all like to get involved in. But it is complex, and you are getting involved in money conversations. And I think you were saying none of us came into the industry to be managers, but you have to do management. And that's where it's really tricky with people, because sometimes, you have to have the hard conversations, not just the brilliant ones when you say, yeah, that's great work, I'm going to sell it. You have to tell them their work isn't good enough, or that they're not right for the agency, and that's really hard. It's about learning how to be kind when you're letting people go. Creative people are so sensitive, so every day you're saying, look at this work, it's in my heart, I believe it's right. And every day there's somebody who's going to turn around and say, it's not quite right, or it's not there yet, or you need to do this. So it is a tough job, and we are sensitive souls, so that bit's hard. But the joy when you see people growing every day in the office, so that is a pretty wonderful part of the jobs. But yeah, you can't stop either of us, I'm sure, writing and doing the ideas.
But just building on that, I do think, while I said nobody comes in to be a manager, you do find a whole new sense of feeling very rewarded when you can mentor and champion and, help people's career.
You've both hinted that you were around before internet era, but safe to say you've both had a lot of experience in the industry. So you would have seen a lot of change, and a lot of that good. I mean, technology, AI, what it's doing now, but also in the diversity and inclusion space and making things a bit more equitable for people to get into the industry. What is an area or areas that you think still require improvement and more work?
So I think particularly from people with lower social, economic backgrounds whose families haven't necessarily had careers, let alone in the creative industries. So I think we haven't done a great job of advertising ourselves. I also think That's sort of from an entry level, but there aren't that many older experienced, particularly women, because there weren't that many women when we were coming up through the ranks. But I think we're not good at holding on to our older talent either. We seem to think that age is a problem rather than something that can absolutely enrich the work and enrich the people we work with.
I was going to touch on that because you've championed, or your mission is to kind of debunk the ageism myth within the industry.
Yeah.
You've gone out quite vocally and talked about that.
Yeah.
Diversity always seems to have come with, I guess, the umbrella over race, ethnicity, and also gender. But for the first time, a couple of weeks ago, I heard diversity spoken about in terms of experience and age, which I thought was a really positive...
Well, it's a double whammy. If you're in any of those other groups, everybody's going to get older, right? We're all going to experience this. So at the moment, if it carries on the way it is, so it's a double whammy or a triple whammy. It's not spoken about. And if you think about, if you've gone into the legal profession, age and experience is something that's, revered. It's like, I don't know why we're so obsessed with, not obsessed with youth, but not obsessed with experience. It just seems a bit weird to me.
I mean, I would just build on, I think we haven't done a good job as an industry in diversity in all aspects. I think sometimes there's like a focus on one part of diversity. I think all forms of diversity as an industry, we haven't. We're so far behind. It's really sad. I agree with Nicky that I think we need to do more to get people to consider it a career earlier. I also think we don't do as good of a job as maybe when I was growing up in the industry anymore of mentoring people who are there. Like, people come in and they're just expected to go do it. And I think I had the real benefit of amazing mentors and champions. Every step of the way, I had people who helped me in various ways. And I think now we're just tasked with less people to do more things in less time. I don't believe it's a lack of wanting to. I think it's people are harried and we have so much going on. I am obsessed with the Liaisons program. I think it's so amazing. I don't think there's enough of that within the organizations to do that. And I also agree, ageism, I've talked about it, is a big issue. One of the things I was really proud of at a previous job was we had a creative who won his first award at the age of 63. And I thought it was amazing. Such an amazing...
It's amazing.
He's such an amazing writer, and it was so beautiful. And he was champion there, as he should be. He mentored younger talent on writing. I would just say diversity is still, I think, our biggest issue in general. But it is all aspects of diversity. And I don't think it's just attracting it. I think it's making sure they're successful once they're in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Different backgrounds, different people have different ways of working and different styles and different amounts of knowledge. And if you don't rally around those people, those groups, and help them and champion them, they're going to leave very quickly. And so I just think that's one of our biggest issues.
Yeah. Okay. So you're both on the non-traditional jury. Can you tell us what non-traditional actually is?
It's something that's not traditional. I'm kidding. Well, Susan Cradle is our jury president. We talked about it on the first day because it can be nebulous. And so sort of what we decided was we were also going to define it as we went based on the work a little bit, but something that we define what it can't be. It can be something that is so traditional in its category that it easily fits in print or film or out of home. There has to be a non-traditional aspect to it. So if it is a film, great. What isn't traditional? What's something that was different, a part of it? If it is a whole campaign, what was the non-traditional aspect of it? Because otherwise it would be very easy to reward something that just zagged, if you will. Because I think, that's it. And we had talked about, is it about the way forward as an industry? But it's really about flipping or hacking something traditional. That's sort of how I look at it. I love a good hack. So if you take something that's pretty traditional and flip it on its head, or it appears to be traditional in some form of media, but really it had this other part of it. So that's what I personally will look for.
No, exactly that. And there are a couple of pieces in there that have got through to this next bit, which actually, when you put that filter in, you think, oh, they're so brilliant. But they are quite traditional in their mediums. But there is a lot of work in there that we've obviously seen in other juries that will do really well in other categories, which is a bit odd. If they're doing well in other categories, they could do well in non-traditional, but then they're not traditional in those categories. It's a very fun category. It's good.
Okay, so it could be a non-traditional print ad,
Yes.
for example.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, it could be something that takes a print ad and has a digital aspect that's going to be interactive when you do it, or like it appears to be a print ad, but it's really a film. I don't know. I'm making something up right now. But yeah, I think, or it just hacked something because, you know, kind of flipped it.
You mentioned Susan Creedle's the jury president. What has she asked you to look for in the work in order to pick something that's possibly best of show or gold?
Well, if I'm being honest, those discussions don't start till tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, the biggest thing that she gave us as like guidance was try to have it where it wouldn't fit as perfectly in one of the traditional categories.
I've got a favourite piece of work.
You do? We haven't discussed.
Yeah, I know, we haven't talked. There's so much great work in there.
There is a lot of great work.
But there's one in particular which is so non-traditional that actually, weirdly, I think won in Cannes, sorry to mention another show, but in Outdoor, which was bizarre, but was very non-traditional outdoor. So actually, that's quite interesting. I think quite controversial, big winner if we awarded it.
I'm so intrigued.
It's the Fit Chicks. I just think for me,
one of my favorites too.
That's so good.
It's so weird too, which is like, I love a good weird thing. Like,
it's perfect. I mean, you know, it's perfect for the brand, and I think that's another thing. You know, there's a lot of purposeful work in there, which is brilliant, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you've got a real branding, something that's absolutely right for them, that's ridiculous. It does technology and then goes a step further with the Strava element to it. I just think, it's just beautiful piece of work and so non-traditional.
There's just such levity when it comes on in the room. It's a joyful piece that has a real purpose. I love when you can feel the brief but not feel the brief. Like, I know what the problem was that they were trying to solve. There's a clear problem. But then they solved it in this like ridiculous but
so
smart. Good. It definitely is one that like my personal barometer is like, oh man, I wish I did that.
Yeah.
It's just the I wish I did that factor.
Yeah.
And I really wish I did that one. I would share it, show it, talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's just so weird. And they went to the level of like the steps on the egg, you know, like the detail. I also think it's not just the idea, it's the craft of every single piece of it. So
and
like
seeing
the
their journeys on
Strava,
Strava, it's just like that
I
extra
agree.
bit. It's just hilarious.
So you haven't had the chance to kind of openly talk amongst the other jury members yet about
No, this
favourite
is our
bits of
first
work?
time talking about it. So
And it's really hard. It's hard doing because we had so much. And what's great about the show is you get to see everything. But we're literally, you do the first round, it's in and out, and then you do 1 to 10 the second round. But the best bit is when you start having those discussions and something you thought wasn't great, someone turns you around and it suddenly becomes your Grand Prix choice or vice versa. It's just excellent when that starts happening. Excellent.
wah.
Sorry.
Are there any trends that you're seeing in the work that's sort of rising to the top at the moment?
I'll say what isn't in there, which I'm happy about. I love technology. I'm a sponge. I'm obsessed with it. But I really love when it's invisible. I'm not a fan of when it's like, I'm just going to use this as a word, like, and then in the metaverse, we did this, and the metaverse that. And like, I don't know why. Nothing against the metaverse. Sorry, metaverse. I'm just using that as an example. I feel like there is a lot of tech and data infused in the work, which I love, and interesting uses of media, which I think is like the intelligence and imagination sort of coming together at this really great intersection that's solving problems, but you don't feel it. Like, it's not like hitting you over the head with data and technology. It's in there, but it's enabling it. It's not the thing.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's a lot of, I would say, like data and technology and interesting uses of media that help enable the core idea that is still a simple idea at its heart.
And I think, once again, we've got the fast food brands are in there. All of them really going for it, which is great. And all quite different, some quite different things for them.
All fitting their personalities, which I think is really fun. Like, the Burger King work is very Burger King. McDonald's work is very McDonald's, as it should be. Like, as a creative, we could take that logo off, not to the world, and I
You'd
would know
so
which
know
brand
what it
it
was,
was
yeah.
because they infuse their personality in it. And like, I do think the brands are coming across very clear in their personalities, which is really lovely.
It's great. I think one thing I miss, and it's been for a few years really, is automotive. Automotive used to be where there was always new tech and they'd be really great work. I think we've got one piece through automotive.
I don't even know if we have one piece through.
Plugins.
Oh yeah, the plugins, which I quite like them.
Yeah.
It was an interesting use of EV and selling it. But yes, there was not a lot of sexy auto that there used to be. We do have a lot of big brand work, which I think is, that would have been one of my big speeches tomorrow. Like, don't forget who pays our bills.
Yeah.
Like, we are in an industry, and I think sometimes shows can get skewed. I love even if a brand has purpose-led work, there's still a brand behind it. So there's big brands in our room. There's MasterCard, there's Dove, there's Burger King, there's McDonald's. I think it's really nice to see because to me that is the way forward. Like we're only going to be a successful industry if our brands believe in creativity, our client partners. So sometimes in previous years, especially during the pandemic, I felt like we were clawing to like, where is a good brand idea? It was much easier to do NGO or purpose.
Yeah.
And I feel like our room currently has a healthy mix. I don't know like the percentage, but it feels like a good 80-20, 70-30, which I think feels like good. What an agency should be, an industry should be. We have a responsibility to give back to the world and change the world. But I love the mix of it. Feels very healthy. So I would say that's a good trend, at least in our room, that I felt.
I think, big brands doing non-traditional is
so great.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So apparently 70% of the workforce suffer from imposter syndrome, and I dare say it's higher in the world of advertising. When was the last time you personally suffered from it, and what did you do to talk yourself around to not feeling it?
I still feel it all the time. Luckily, I have an amazing husband who guides me off of that conversation. I'm very open with him. The last time I felt it in a big way, I feel it a lot, but in a big way was right before I started this job. Ogilvy was always my favorite job. I'm a boomerang. Legends were in that seat. David Ogilvy invented, was one of the creators of our industry. And I just did not feel like I could live up to that, and had a mass amount of oh my God, and it's so big, and what if it's too big, and what if I'm not good? And my husband literally was like, you say this all the time at every job. And I think it's probably what makes me me. David Ogilvy talks about divine discontent. I just think I still have a lot to prove. I don't feel like I've done the best work of my life. I don't feel like I've set enough people up for success. And so I think that's just who I am. I just feel like there's always more work to do. But I think for anybody who feels that, it's very normal. It's very common. And just make sure you have a support system. I have to tell it to the person, it would either be my mom or my husband. And I talk about, I have 2 kids. I have a daughter who's 23, and I talk about it with her because I'm assuming at some point she's going to feel that. And so I try to use my success and also I feel that still but it's tough. I do think that's a thing that just doesn't go away. And I don't think everybody experiences it, but I do.
I absolutely, every single day. And I think probably the most recent would have been yesterday, walking into that jury room and seeing the gang on the sofa, the women in particular, no disrespect to the guys, but oh my God, the powerhouse of women. I was thinking, what the hell am I doing here? But I've also got a brilliant husband who I always feel really lucky that I'm working in the industry, lucky that I'm in Vegas. And he says, stop saying you're lucky. You should start saying to yourself, you deserve it, which I haven't ever got to that point. But he's saying, stop thinking you're lucky. But I genuinely do think we're lucky. And I think as creative people, we're never satisfied. It's never good enough.
Right, divine discontent.
It totally is. It's we talk about positive dissatisfaction. Well, for me, it's perfect. So I'm never satisfied. And that's not with everyone else. It's mainly with myself. Exactly what you said, have I helped enough people? I don't think I've done the best work of my career. And I worry that I never will do. I think that's a really positive driver for creative people. But yeah, I feel it all the time. And it's normal.
The one advice I would give is don't ever let it hold you back from taking a job. Every job that's ever been offered, I question, am I ready for that? Am I good enough to do that? And luckily I had again, my mom and my husband and people, I just believed that I'm going to figure it out. And if I fail, I fail. I'll figure. And so when and if you experience it, just don't let it hold you back. Find someone to talk it through or take the risk, take the challenge, open up to somebody, because I do think too many, especially women, don't ever believe they're ready for the role. So they wait, but you're never really ready for the role. You got to just do the role and you'll figure it out kind of as you go. So that would probably be my biggest advice.
I did an experiment with Campaign years ago, and we got 10 women and 10 guys, and they went separately into a room, one by one, and we having to screen these questions. But, have you ever asked for a pay rise? All the guys said yeah. Not arrogantly, I just said yeah. All the women said no. Have you ever asked to be promoted? All the women said no, I wouldn't ask. I'd go and talk to my friends and I need the validation before. You don't need the validation. You know in your heart and in your gut that you're really good. And if someone's offered you a job, it's because they think you're really good. And like you say, you're stepping into a role you've not done before, so you're not going to be perfect at that role. So, just get your champions around you and get them championing you. And,
everybody needs a personal board of directors. Who's your 5?
The go-tos.
The go-tos. And they shouldn't all live in the industry. It should be a few from the industry, a few outside, people who are going to call you on your bullshit. But they're your personal board of directors. I think everybody needs those people that they can go to who are going to either say, you should not do that, or, talk you into it.
But it's very normal.
Very normal.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome is so normal.
If you don't have it, there's something wrong.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much to the two of you, Liz, Nicky, for taking time out after a heavy day of award show judging. It's been a lovely conversation, really open, really honest, and I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
Thank you so much.
Liz Taylor is the Global Chief Creative Officer at Ogilvy, and Nicky Bullard is the Group Chief Creative Officer for the Mullen Lowe Group in London. They're both judges in the 2023 London International Awards. I'm Joe Hawkins, Creative Director at Eardrum and one of the hosts of Created for Creatives. The producer is Sarah Knights. The theme music is by Brian Yessian of Yessian Music. The manager is Larissa Levy from the London International Awards. This podcast is an Eardrum production.